Hello, my name is Jan Wampler, and I'm a professor of architecture at various schools, MIT and University of South Florida, and also I teach around various countries around the world. And I have developed a program for young architects called 10,000 Architects to try to educate young people around the world who might want to be an architect, and particularly places that need architects. And I find that my travels and my work is mostly international, and I design community centers and schools and housing in various countries. I find that I always have one person, one young student, come up to me and say, could you teach me how to be an architect or a designer? And one did this to me in Ecuador, and for some time we emailed back and forth, and I did what I could to help that person become an architect or teach an architect. Now, of course, they may not be architects, but the point being very simple. 99.9% of the world is not designed by architects, a very small percentage. On the other hand, that 99% that doesn't have architects need help badly. And I would say that that's really the philosophy of what I think a new definition of an architect should be, is first helping the world. I've done many projects in India where taught a group of young women, probably 30 or 40 of them, how to help people in villages, and then they went out with models of the work that we did and showed to people. And so they were architects. In this case, they were helping people design their own house. In Honduras, I did the same, where people worked with me designing their houses, and then later young people worked on the houses. Also in Africa, where I designed HIV centers. And then later with the children, they then in turn took the designs and took it around to different villages. And now I think there are 200 that have been built. So all my work, and this is also work in Turkey, where I designed, after the earthquake, a village and a community center, primarily for women. And also I believe that an architect shouldn't only design buildings, but also design ways in which people can have an economic income. That's the big issue. You give people housing, that's not solving the problem. You have to give people a way of earning money. In the case of Turkey, women are making scarves, which incidentally they sell and make more money in a day than their husbands make all week. And they're using that money now for put into educational scholarships. Well, there was one young man, again, in Turkey, he's only about 14, who asked me if I could teach him to be an architect. And he's really the impetus of what started all of this. In India, I found that the smallest village would always have a satellite. And they knew more about TV in America than I did, or I do. I don't watch American TV, but they do. And they actually see all of the terrible programs, but nevertheless, they're interconnected. So people are interconnected in an electronic way. And that led me to the notion that we could teach people something about architecture over the internet in a very simple way. Most people have access to the internet. And so a program was devised that I designed working with students from MIT of how to do that. And we put together this online program, which is not yet, but will be in English, Chinese, and Spanish. And we did a lot of work on how to make people understand just measuring things, as an example. So we use the foot because measuring is difficult, but everybody's got a foot. So we ask them to measure their foot and then piece off rooms to see how large it was. We also taught them in this how to draw and how to make models, so that they would have a basic understanding of what it means to be an architect. We also said something about the principles of good design, which were mostly issues that I'm concerned about, which is that buildings of the future should be sustainable. They should be self-sufficient as much as possible. They should be making a place, not just a design. They need natural ventilation. They need solar orientation. And they need to use local materials. That's very important, not materials that are imported. And it needs to be durable. So then we devised a series of assignments for students to use. And we built models of these. We had great discussions about the models because people around the world don't have the same model of building material that people might at MIT have, but they do have boxes. And it was some great discussions because we found that beer cartons were probably the most prevalent, but we didn't want to advertise beer or cigarettes. So we used other kinds of boxes that they might use. So our first assignment was to ask them to describe where they live and talk about it. And then draw a plan of their existing house, take photographs of their family, and then what is good about their house and what isn't. The second assignment was to design their future home. And incidentally, they did very well. And some of them, the buildings were outstanding. Then we asked them to design a daycare center, and we talked about the need for daycare centers and what goes in them to program. Again, showing examples. And then it worked into designing a small school, which we were working up to actually designing a small community. So school was an important part of it. And again, we showed them examples, and then they in turn, the students would design a school for their particular community. Some of these communities were in the city, some were in the rural, some were in the wilderness. Then designing a health care center, because that's an essential part of a village, in my opinion. And again, they showed different designs. Finally, well, not finally, but also a community center, what I call a gathering place, a place where people can come together. Not only for the young to learn education, but also for the adults to learn skills, which is needed throughout the world. And they again did that. Finally, we asked them to design a marketplace because most small villages still have marketplaces. And then the last assignment was to design, perhaps you might call it a plaza or a park in their village where activities could take place around it. We tested these ideas in various places in Boston. And here I have photographs of some of the places where people lived, some of the descriptions where they lived, all different kinds of environment, photographs of the people that worked on this, and then their assignments and their solutions, which we would then criticize and send back to them, and they would change the designs and send them back to us. And they were very proud of what they had done. They often had school projects. These are all, by the way, I would say people, young teenagers that did this. Photographs of their houses and their houses that they designed. And beautiful descriptions that they made of it. So what I think the issue about this is that there's a great potential here for these young people that may never have the opportunity to go to school. But they might, in this case, through this course, learn something about design. They may not become architects, but at least they will know something about it and help their elders when a building might be designed in their village. And I'm hoping that some of them, through this course, which we give them credit for, might go on to college or schools. I say the hope for the future of our world, which in my opinion at the moment is in terrible shape in every area. Terrible shape in terms of natural resources and the lack of water, the lack of food in many places, the lack of good housing, good schools. But the future lies for me with our youth. And I'm trying to do what I can to help the youth. Thank you.